Welcome back to the Daily Fact. Now, before we go to Ozayr Patel for our Africa wrap-up for the week, let's just take a look at the newspapers, and we're going to start off with The Citizen and its front page. And as I mentioned earlier on, the current situation in Eswatini, as you can see, a burnt-out truck right over there. The situation is really getting out of control. Reports of people dying due to the protests. So, this is a difficult moment here, and because it is our neighbors, you've got to look at it with really detailed attention. And we hope that there's going to be a solution with regards to this. Another story there, suffer the children. Children are going to be the last to receive the COVID-19 jabs in already what is a really slow vaccine rollout by our government. Let's move to the back page of The Citizen, and the other one is Box prepare for Georgia. They, of course, will be facing Georgia today, actually tonight at 7 o'clock in a test match against the European nation in preparation for their test match against the 3 test matches that are going to be playing against the British and Irish Lions. That series starting later this month. Then we go to our next newspaper, which is the Mail and Guardian, where it has former President Jacob Zuma with his his sell-by date. A nice play on words there. And the tiresome, long-running Zuma saga may be moving behind bars, but there is no chance it's gripped on the ANC and the country will end. And there we have his face with the Gupta brothers and some of his associates, and former President Jacob Zuma in an orange overall with a prison mug with coffee. So yeah, it remains to be seen what is going to happen. He's meant to be handing himself in today into a prison cell, either in Nkandla or Johannesburg. So we are going to be seeing what is going to happen. The latest reports we have been reading is they are trying to avoid President Zuma going to jail, but the Constitutional Court, being the highest court in the land, has made its decision, and there is nothing that can be done to stop him from potentially going to prison. That is your newspapers for the day. Now it is time for your international updates. And of course, we are going to be joined by Ozayr Patel, the digital editor of the Conversation Africa, in a bit. Now joining me is Ozayr Patel. Ozayr, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah so much for joining us again.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for having me, and thanks to the listeners.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Ozayr, we have to start off our next door neighbors, Eswatini. It's getting out of control, isn't it?
Yes, Faraz, Africa's last absolute monarchy, Eswatini, is at a tipping point. Protesters have taken to the street demanding the right to elect political leaders and are calling for reforms to the country's system of absolute monarchy. King Mswati is, safe to say, not a fan favorite at the moment in the country. People are calling for democracy, accountability, and reform. The Prime Minister has assured people that concerns are being addressed. There are also rumors that the king has fled the country and that his health hasn't been too good in recent times. And there's been internet blackouts, which lawyers and MTN are taking to court. The army has since been called in and clashes are taking place. There's a curfew from 6 in the evening to about 4 in the morning. And the Prime Minister in South Africa are calling for calm. There's calls for dialogue, but it seems like rioting and looting is still taking place. And it's really at a tipping point there at the moment.
Ozayr, moving from the southern part of the country, we're going to the southern part of the continent, to the eastern part of the continent, and the Tigray region. Again, bit of calm, but there still is fighting and conflicts that is going on there.
Yes, so this week it took quite a turn. On Monday, Ethiopia declared a unilateral ceasefire in the northern Tigray region after rebel fighters retook Mekelle, the regional capital. And the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or they're also known as the TDF, are said to be back in control of the region. And Ethiopia says that the ceasefire was called to allow aid to get to the region, where about 350,000 people are facing famine. Ethiopian soldiers pulled out of Tigray as forces were allowed back in. And earlier in the week, just before the ceasefire, there were strong clashes, and the Tigrayan forces now they seem to be in control of the region. International pressure has been building, and Ethiopia were criticized after the airstrikes killed quite a lot of people and three doctors from Doctors Without Borders. So them calling the ceasefire and pulling out is somewhat of a surprise. But Abiy Ahmed did play it down. As he said, his forces could take back the region at any point. It's really crucial that aid gets to the region as soon as possible. As 350,000 people facing famine is really quite bad. It's a lot of people that will suffer because of that. And new reports coming out this week say that Ethiopia's soldiers, as they were pulling out, were raiding all food stores and still causing quite a lot of destruction and harm to people as they were pulling out before the TDF pulled into the region.
Ozayr, we then have to speak about the Delta variant. This is wreaking havoc across the continent. We see Tunisia, there's souring infections there. Here at home also, we're seeing souring infections. Just last night, 21,000 new cases were recorded. What is the next step? Because vaccination rollouts seem to be very low. Here in South Africa, the over 50s now have a chance to go ahead and get their vaccination. But it just seems like Africa is taking such a step back in getting these vaccinations while the Delta variant continues to plunge this nation into darkness.
Yes, for us, it's true. There are concerns that the Delta variant is really causing havoc across the continent. One of the major concerns is that we don't have adequate testing in many countries. So we don't actually know how bad it is. And the stats don't tell us fully how many people are suffering with the virus, how many people are dying with the virus. South Africa is safe to say has probably the best testing abilities. So there's our fair reflection. But countries like Namibia and Tunisia are really seeing surges in cases. They're running out of medical oxygen. The hospital admissions are increasing. There's a high percentage and rise in cases, and it's basically more than any other continent. And the major concern is that there aren't any vaccinations. And well, there are, but they're very minimal, and vaccinations are not increasing. So at the moment, they're still too unaffordable for so many on the continent, and their rollout plans are flawed. So this variant is more transmissible. There's huge concern that the health systems will become strained. The WHO are calling for funding and setting up various initiatives to get vaccines across the continent. There's been donations to the Aspen Institute in South Africa for vaccinations by America. And it basically speaks to how Africa must be able to deal with its own vaccine creating mechanisms and systems, because relying on other countries for it clearly isn't working. And the danger is that many lives will be lost, or incomes will suffer, or hospitals will really be unable to cope unless some sort of vaccination takes place. And it's clear that vaccines are the only way to deal and help with this variant.
Yeah, it remains to be seen what's going to happen. A Delta variant, we saw what happened in India. We do not want that same fate to befall us here on the continent of Africa. Ozayr Patel, we say Jazakallah to you so much, and inshallah we'll see you again next week.
I mean, Jazakallah for having me.
I know it's an absolute pleasure. Ozayr Patel, digital editor at The Conversation Africa. Every Friday from 10 to 4 to just before 4 o'clock, he gives up a wrap of the week's African stories. After the break, it will be our community news by mainly focusing on our Juma Nasiya between Asr and Maghrib. Do stay tuned.